Okay, welcome back. Back to a new painting. This one, because it is an endless well of material. This is going to be the general reference that I'm working off of. I've done a lot of practice on anatomy in order to get myself prepped to do more bodies. I've noticed that is severely my weak point, so I'm working on it. I started off by getting the general placement of each part, the head, torso, waist, legs, and so on. This was incorrect the first time, so I had to erase and start over, but it was at least a rough gesture of where it's supposed to be, and from here, after erasing, I could just shift things in slightly to get them corrected. This is why it's okay to make mistakes the first time around. When I started sketching them the second time around, it started looking a lot more correct, and having the faint outline of the first attempt helped it all pull together a lot easier. Any mistake made in this stage is easy to reverse and fix, just so long as you don't get too deterred by each mistake you make. And as you can see, I was using the palette to create straight lines, because it's way easier, and if you don't, then it's easy to add a slight bow to the line, and then most people will pick out the weird shape if it's not intentional. It's okay to intentionally create a bow shape to swords or have things be warped, but that would have to be kind of a consistent theme. If you don't intentionally do it throughout, then it can easily just look like a mistake. The figure was the hard part. The easy part is getting the bordering walls, which are like pillars, because it's like an old wooden shack, and then a broken fence kind of gate, and then in the background will be the mountains and the buildings in the distance. This part is going to be fairly easy because it's going to be the less detailed part and not the draw of the painting. I started off by deepening a blue with orange, and I had not used any black for the background, at least not for the buildings in the background, because honestly, it didn't need any. Later, I will kind of pale it out with a little bit more blue and a little bit more white to get that sort of depth that I'm trying to go for. It's hard to tell because of how the camera picked it up, but I did a sort of very faint gradient going from top to bottom by slowly adding in more vibrance and brightness to the color, because I kind of wanted it to sort of feel the depth without being too in your face. This is really where it starts to veer away from realism and into fantasy, because the sky does not resemble a natural sky. I made it into a sort of like brownish fading to orange because the reference I was going off of is Undead settlement in Dark Souls. In the beginning it starts looking like mud, but as I bring in some more orange and some more yellow to add some vibrance where the coverage of clouds wasn't quite as dense, the color started to come out. But when you move from a darker color to a lighter color, it may be a no-brainer to most, but I keep forgetting as I start to lose the paint traction on the brush. When you move to a lighter color, you want to clean it off. That was kind of an issue I was running into a little bit, because I kept forgetting that that's still something you have to do when moving to brighter colors. Darker colors run deeper than brighter colors, so it's easy to pull in color that you don't want to. The brush I was using is very important to me, so I wanted to make sure it was clean and taken care of. So in the time it took me to clean the brush and get it back sparkling clean, it gave the paint that was on the canvas plenty of time to dry, and that way I could paint the brighter colors without having to worry about dragging some of the darker colors in. Considering it was heavy on the yellows, it was very important to keep it from getting too deep into a different color. Just keep it as bright as possible. I didn't want any of the colors I used for the sky to go to waste, so I mixed the colors of the sky and used that to create the wooden board at the guy's feet. And then I used those same colors of the board, and then deepened it into like a deeper brown, and used that to build the wood frame around it. I painted the wooden frame along the grain of where the wood was going, so it was in like a straight up and down in perspective of the wood. And then from there, just mixing in a lot of white in with it, or mostly doing white on the brush, and just dragging that down to add the depth and highlight. Honestly, that part worked a little bit too smooth for me, so I don't really know how to explain it properly, because it ended up looking pretty realistic when I was done with it. It's because it kind of mixed in with the brush some of the older colors I was moving down, so it added its own kind of natural gradient. I think just experimenting, if you do it yourself, is the best way to learn. Anyone familiar with my Dark Knight Havel will recognize this dark sign I'm making. It looks like a moon, but it's not. I did a sort of vibrant yellow as the surrounding, and then I filled it in with a kind of black hole. The hard part about the figure was that primarily he was the same color throughout. There was only like slight differences in gradients, and I wanted to make sure I could pick that up without making him too sharp or too dull. I decided to use the same browns that I was using for the wood, but add a little bit more blue and a little bit more black in order to kind of make him stand out, but not stand out too much from the rest of the painting. He's got to have the same theme as the rest of them, so it was just about striking that balance between enough difference where he pokes out from the background, but not too much difference where he looks like he's just a different project entirely. This is where I decided to make it a gradient between the cape, so that as it pulled left, it turned more bluish and bright, and as it moved right, it was more of like a deepish, almost brown, but not quite. The helmet, dagger, and sword were all metal, so I wanted to keep them somewhat consistent, but understanding that there was shadow in it, so I was trying to not remove the depth entirely. Add the bevel, I just used a little bit more blue and did it down the middle of the blade. From there on, it was just adding the details in order to make him stick out a bit more, and to have each individual part be a little bit more defined, like his chest, his leg, his arm, and so on. From there, he was done. I thought it would take a lot longer to do, because I thought I would actually need to focus on more detail with the figure, but each part was able to be discriminated enough to where I could confidently leave it be, where you could tell what it was. And that's where I like to leave stuff, is where you can understand what it is and call it good. But that'll do it for this episode. I'm glad anyone was able to watch, or if anybody learned anything, that'd be awesome too. Anyway, thank you for watching. Man, I don't know if I'm too tired, but my aim has been terrible with towels. Anywho, if I could do that without snagging this thing too much. That's it done. I feel like it's well enough. Anyway, thank you for watching.